welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
This episode is part 1 of building our inside rooms. We're all ready to start framing in our inside rooms now, so we brought the 2x2s inside to dry out.
The last time we did any framing was when we actually built the shell of this structure. So everything, including like the loft joists, all went in at that time. And every other task since then has been something totally different, like the siding, insulating, all the paneling and everything, the roughing of the electrical and the plumbing. So it's been a long time since we framed anything. So before engaging in framing the shower and the toilet room, we've gone back into our SketchUp file and reviewed what we had there. And we noticed that there's a couple things we've had ideas about since the last time we made any modifications to this, particularly about how we're going to build the door to close the doorway when you go in to do your business. So that's important, obviously. So we've adjusted what we have in SketchUp to accommodate that, as well as a couple other details, and just generally refreshed our memories on how we're going to put this together and in what order we're going to assemble it so that we do it properly and it's easy. We started with some little blocks up in between the loft joists that are pretty much just backing for the paneling that's going to go on. So obviously we want to seal off the entirety of the toilet room here. So the paneling is going to have to come right up into here. So we've got those in place, and we did those first because as subsequent pieces, such as this one, which is sort of the top plate for this wall that'll be in front of me, once that's in, it's really hard to work in there. So those go up first, then these top plates, we've already got these ones for the sort of these walls. And then we're gonna do the bottom plates, basically working off these to make sure it's straight down to where the bottom plates sit. Those will get screwed into the floor, and then we'll put in the studs after. And that way we can measure each spot that needs a stud between the top and bottom plate, because there will be some variation as we go around the room, I expect. And then we'll cut the pieces slightly long so that there's a bit of friction when we bash them in, and then we can sort of knock them around until they're in the right spot. And then we'll probably have to screw in on an angle to affix it, which is fine. And we're using screws everywhere because it's a bit more forgiving. We can kind of line things up carefully, screw it in, and then we could always unscrew it if we needed to change something. And also this way, all of the sort of tight fitting, meaning like between the bottom of the joist and the floor, will be between rough lumber and rough lumber. We won't ever be trying to bash something in, scraping against the nice finish of the loft joists. And you know, there's potential for us to mess something up nice. So when we get all this in place, and then we just bang in the studs in between the rough bottom and top plates, it'll just be easier that way.
We're using that same technique that we used in the toilet room, which seemed to work, which is we put the top plate up first because it lines up with the joist, and then we line the bottom plate up to the top plate. So there isn't too much to measure off of, so what we did was we just used the seam in the wall panels here to measure off from the top plate, and then we used that measurement to get this little mini bottom plate here on the fender, and then we'll measure off of this to get the bottom plate on the floor. So we've got our mark here for this side, so we'll put that up there, and then to make sure that it's straight, we'll just use the framing square up against the wall. Even though it feels like we're just screwing in blind, we know that there's wood behind here because that's the way we designed it when we did the framing. And that also goes for when we put the stud up against here. Drill it.
Feel square there?
Yeah, I got it lined up to the mark on this side, and then it's up against here.
We're just filling in the inner studs. In this wall, there's going to be one right here. And what we've done is just made a mark on the top and bottom plates to make sure that it's vertically straight. And then we've cut the piece so that it is a little bit long, so there's a bit of friction. And then we can just tap it in to line up with our mark, and then fire a couple screws in there to hold it down. And it just makes it easier when there's this friction holding it in place. When we go to fasten it, it's not gonna slide out. We're not trying to hold it in place and fight it, basically. And for even more holding power, I'm putting a little clamp on here just to make sure that it's flush this way, like this surface is flush with this surface. We need to stud up against this wall, and you'll remember that this is where we poked these wires through that are for the lights that will be in this toilet room. We poked them out so that they would basically poke into this wall once it went in. So now that it's going in, I've just notched, sort of just drilled out the top of the stud here so that I can lay the wires in here. And then get the stud into place. Make sure nothing's pinched. And basically, get that in like that. So the wires are good there. And now you can see that they're basically inside this wall. And we'll be able to poke one out for this light and then one down over here for that light.
Now that we're done framing the inside rooms, we are preparing the panels. It's the same stuff we used on our walls. And on one side we just sealed it with a bargain bin paint just to prevent any warping. And then on the good side we're going to do the same thing that we did for the walls, just prime it and paint them white. So there's one last thing we have to do to get the panels ready to be primed, and that's to cut out holes for the light switches. There's 3 panels that need holes cut out for them, and we've just clamped it down into place. And to find sort of the most natural spot for it, I'm just going to stand inside the room like I would be and just reach around, and wherever my hand goes will be where we put the switch.
And I'm gonna do it too, and then we'll sort of pick the average of the two. Before we can panel these walls and close them up, we need to get any wiring into them that's needed. So there's a switch here for the toilet room. And when we roughed in the wiring, we just left a huge bundle coiled up here. And now that the walls are in place, I've been able to drill in and get the wire into place. There's a bunch of extra length here, I just haven't cut off yet. And there's another switch that's going to be in this wall section for the TV room back here. And I left all the wires for this whole wall section all over on this end. And now I'm realizing that I'm having to pass it all the way over to get into this wall. And I'm not sure why I didn't run it like I did the power wires for the lighting strips that are gonna be in here. You'll remember that we sort of did a fancy drill to have them poking out so that when we put this framing in, they were just in the right wall cavity, but it's the same wall cavity that we need these into. So I don't know, it's kind of a mistake we're realizing now. It would have been way easier to have just run it over and poked it through maybe down here so that it was in that wall. So anyway, now what I'm having to do is come from here where the bundle was, drilled through and kind of staying up above the door here, going through the next joist, I've drilled down, and now to get from here, this part of the wall, over to here, this part of the wall, I'm having to do a fancy drill, basically drilling in to both sides and having the holes meet up, and now I'm gonna try to fish and get the wire around a corner. So I'll show you what I'm doing to try to make this happen. The holes are here and here, and I used a bit that's big enough for the bundle of 3, but not so big that I would chew up and kind of bust through the wood and stuff. So the only problem is that I won't be able to just ram this bundle through and have it turn on its own. So I've got a little single wire that I should be able to get around a corner like that. And now I'm just gonna tape this on and see if I can't make it turn. So what I'll do is I'll basically back one of these wires up and lay this one on so the bundle is never more than 3 thick. Like this would be 4 thick if I try to do it like this. So that won't go because it's too small. So you'll see. Okay, so let's see if I can't make this happen. Yes. There we go. So it's pretty tight, but it's going. So that will allow me to get into this wall space from there. So there it is all in place. And the only thing we're gonna have to do though is, because this is so close to this edge, and really all of these wires, because they're going through 2x2s, are too close to the face, we're gonna have to put protection plates. Granted, these wires aren't really carrying any power. It's not really a danger if we hit it, but it will definitely mess up its functionality. So here's just another example of basically the same trick. In this case, I'm just trying to keep the wires away from this face to avoid having a protection plate there, especially because on the other side of this is the nice finished joist that you'll see when you're in the kitchen. So I've drilled holes close to this face up, and then just a really shallow hole here to meet up with it. And because this hole is only big enough to accept the one wire, I'm gonna have to basically elaborate on my trick a bit here. So just gonna poke that through, grab it with some needle nose, get that through. And since the hole is only big enough for the one wire, I can't just tape these together because that'll be too thick. So what I'm actually gonna do is strip this and then cut off half of the wires on the inside, because this Cat 6 cable has 4 pairs of wires in it. So now the whole thing is no thicker than just one cable. The tape helps hold together like the little twisting that I did, and it also smooths off anywhere that like the little ends of the wires could be something that could catch on inside the hole. So that is covered over by the tape. You always want to push as well as pull, because if you just pull and there's something binding up here, you could just bust your little connection that you've made there. And that's pretty much that. All right, I've got the protection plates up, and I cut some in half just because with these little wires, didn't need to protect such a wide space. But I did put them up on both sides of anywhere that the wires pass through the narrow 2x2s here. And of course with this ridiculous corner, I've just completely protected, you know, any angle that you could come at and damage the wire from.
If you want to see some of our previous videos, click on the preview tiles, and subscribe if you want to follow our progress. You can also visit our website here. Was that a bit meticulous sounds?
Floor and the bottom of the